passage have anything to do with gambling? Does that tell us anything that would help us answer the question, should I as a Christian engage in gambling? Yes, no, maybe, why not? Mark?
It does.
Okay.
Especially if they're cutting something. Because basically gambling is, I want to put a little bit down to win a lot.
Okay.
So there can be an act of coveting, hiring something else, not mine, and I'll play this bet with the hopes of.
Okay. Mark said it covers the idea of coveting. What else would you think when you read it? Does this say anything to anyone else when they think about gambling? No, so we're talking coveting here. Let's turn to the next bit, because there was a few of these I wasn't sure what he was thinking. So feel free to disagree if you don't think this has anything to do with it.
You can make an argument here on love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the counter argument to that, though, that I think has some merit is that, yeah, but if my neighbor's agreeing to do the same thing that I'm doing, it's a bit of it's a stretch to play it that way.
Yeah.
If my neighbor agrees to place a bet the same I'm playing, it's hard to say
You're treating your neighbor, yeah.
Agreed to the terms the same as I did.
That's true. Bob?
The only thought that I could add with this passage is it somehow taking advantage of your you have superior knowledge when you do something. I don't know. I'm just speculating. As I read this, I'm with you. I'm trying to figure out why this.
Yeah.
That would be the house rule.
Yeah. What about 1 Timothy 6, 9 through 10? Will somebody volunteer to read that for me? Look. Or I can draft someone. Sean, you go ahead and read that for us. Thank you. Okay. What about 1 Timothy 6? Does this one speak to some of the issues with gambling? Okay. Yeah, this one seemed a little more straightforward to me. What do we glean from this passage that perhaps makes me cautious about gambling or makes me think it's something that as a Christian I shouldn't be involved in?
Value money too much, pull you away from God, from spiritual things.
Mm-hmm.
You make money God, little g. You're so focused on what it can take over.
Yep. Very good. There's any number of things, what Bob mentioned for those of you listening, the idea that money, if you value money, it can become a sort of a little g God into you and pull you away from God. I think we've often make the point that we can do that with anything. Money, though, is probably one of the most common. Yeah. Rita? And I think that's a good point. The idea of a snare, the things that are associated with gambling, the idea that most gambling takes place in a place where, as a Christian, we don't need to be. And we'll actually talk about that a little later because that's one of the allures of the sports gambling. I can do it on my phone from home. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think that's a good point. Mark?
Part of this you got to consider is a lot of these verses, I think the snare and the entrapment part is very applicable. Some people who do gambling, it's not about the money. Money is simply a way to keep score.
Yeah.
Really, played the odds and beat it this much.
Yep.
And the money is simply a way to keep score as to how
Yeah.
well I'm doing at it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, it's the same thing, frankly, it's the same mindset. There are people that are literally worth millions and billions of dollars. And
Yeah.
you say, well, why do you work? You don't ever need to work
Yeah.
the rest of your life. You've got enough money that you can live a very
Yeah.
comfortable life. And yet they go back to work every day. Why do they do it? Because they all say, it's a game. I want to play the game and
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about the money, it's about the winning. The money is the way of tracking how well I'm doing.
Yeah, gambling creates a mindset of I can keep track of how good I am by how much I win. I think that's true. Turn to Matthew 5. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yep. Gambling is not set up, a casino is not set up to get you to never come back again. I guess would be the way to say that. It is a what is the word I'm trying to say? Yeah, self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating type of thing. It breeds upon itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of conferences that ISP professional conferences that are held in Vegas and back at Caesar. Both of them are at Caesar Palace. And you know, on the way to the conference, because they put the conference in this area and you got to walk half a mile to get there. Well, while you're walking off to the left, off to the right, you'll just see. I mean, big islands of gambling activity going on. You know,
Yep.
slot machines and all kinds of things. You know, on the way, and I thought, man, I can't imagine somebody being addicted to gambling in a place like this. But they make it to where it's just so easy to wander off in there, go play the slot machines, or you know, go play blackjack or whatever you want to do. It's right there. And you can go play it if you want to.
Yep.
And Vegas, you get off the airport at Vegas.
Yeah.
There is a row of machines right down the aisle as you're walking off your plane.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. I mean, clear till when you
Yep.
get on the plane, there's gambling literally within feet of you.
Yeah. Huey, did I see your hand? Okay. If it comes back, let me know. We'll go back to it. Julian?
Just kind of tagging on what Lydia said in regard to and think about gambling and all to go back to that's where you spend a lot of time there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like being angry, trying to get even with somebody. You spend all this time figuring out ways to get at them, and you're not spending your time adding your faith or virtue knowledge. You're not working toward those heavenly things,
Yeah.
and you're not doing those things that are going to help you reach that heavenly goal.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. It becomes something that takes away from what could be better used. Right.
that's back to the
Yeah. The idea of not being content. Yes, Huey? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And I think maybe we don't mention this enough or say it. It is fun. A lot of times sin is, I'm going to use air quotes here, quote unquote, fun. It's enjoyable. It's neat to walk in and win a bunch of money. And you can get hooked on, even if it's not the money, this is Mark's point, even if it's not the money, it's the feeling. Wow, I won. I like it when I win. It feels good to win. I want to go back and win again. So let's turn over to Matt. Was there anyone else before I move on? Nope. Can I get someone to read Matthew 5 for us? Matthew 5, beginning in verse 13. Go ahead.
Salt of the earth, salt loses its saltiness, and it is no longer good for anything
Okay. What does this have to do with gambling? What does my light have to do with my wanting to go gamble?
Talk about it, it pulls you away from God. So
Mhm.
one of the things that happens is your focus is on the wrong way, the
Yep.
wrong thing. Like Julian said, you're not studying your scriptures, you're
Yeah.
not edifying yourself, you're not
Yeah.
gaining in knowledge of the word of God so that you can share it with others. You're so focused on that, it just takes you away from everything. It's just like it says, you're salt, but you have no flavor anymore. You're really no good to God.
Yeah.
You're not doing God's will
Yeah.
anymore because you're so focused on this other stuff.
Yeah. I think the point that Rita made earlier about where it takes place at. You're not going to show your light a whole lot sitting in front of a slot machine. It has become, I think, more accepted in our society, but just honestly, how many of you in here, people who you work with who know you're a Christian, would they be surprised if they heard you were going to the casino? I think so. I think for most people there is still a stigma that Christians don't do that thing, and you say you're a Christian.
You know, that makes me think, I've had, and I don't want to be offensive, I'll probably not invite her back. But,
Yeah.
You know, I've heard some.
Yeah.
I've heard, you know, recently you hear people talk about how, well, Vegas is a family destination.
Oh,
You know, and I mean, from what I can see, you know, from Travel Channel, there's some pretty cool stuff there.
yeah.
That is neat. But you know, the people who run that city, the people who run those casinos, which run that town, they're not stupid.
Yeah.
And yeah, you make it a family destination, and you start taking your kids there from the time they're little, and you introduce them to all the cool stuff. You know, when Mark stayed
Yeah.
at Caesars, mostly, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Because it is pretty impressive. You know, you get that in your mind that, hey, this is a neat place to be. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, they're priming people to make it as you said, a very normalized thing and a very normal place to be.
Yep.
Not referred to Las Vegas.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For years it was referred to as Sin City, but
Lost wages.
yeah. But you don't. I think Rita's right. You don't hear that anymore. That isn't. They have rebranded themselves, as they would say.
But you know, this is Mark said, I've been to conferences in Las Vegas, obviously not there for gambling, but you're there seeing
Yeah.
it. You see all the alcohol,
Yep.
you see what appear to be easy evening and so on and so forth. You see all those influences that aren't good, but they're good at, you know, it's like they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
There's no clocks in there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they control it all.
Yep.
And they're very good at it, but the one thing that Rita said, Mark sent pictures of the ceilings of, hey, they didn't build these places by losing money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's a good point. Oh, do you have one more?
Another
Mike?
thing when you talk about gambling, especially on this level, you have to realize that ultimately underneath it, it's almost always organized crime. I mean, that's one of the big things about Las Vegas. For years, they were well known. It was like the worst kept secret in the world. You know that organized crime runs most of Vegas.
Yep.
Well, it's still there. It didn't go away. They just got more clever about how they hide it.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't talk about it. It didn't go away. It's just that, you know, they just, if you would, mainstreamed it, normalized it a bit, gave it a better face,
Yeah.
and they still sell the same thing.
Yep.
Kind of going back to the story in the workbook, when you look at winning the lottery, seems like they had a program on TV. They took 10 winners of the lottery and kind of looked at their lives, and their lives weren't really that great.
Yeah.
Because they ended up, you know, family, people came out of the woodwork wanting to borrow money, expected to get that money from them, because they had 80 million.
Yeah.
What they need with all of that.
Yep.
And the difficulties that caused. And of course, then you buy this house and you know, how you buy that house. I mean, most of them were broke
Yeah.
within 5 to 10
Yeah.
years. I mean, and you're
Mhm.
talking some of them like in the 80 millions and they're broke.
Yep.
And they're not, you think you're gonna be happy,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
that doesn't, well,
Yeah.
when we say money doesn't bring us happiness.
Yep.
But godliness with great gain, working with your hands,
Mm-hmm.
that you're gonna be happier with that than you are
Yep.
the other direction.
David, do you have a?
Yeah, when, a few minutes ago, we were talking, I thought of a verse in Timothy,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, Titus chapter 2, verse 8. Your message is to be sound beyond reproach, so that the opponent will be ashamed, having nothing bad to say about us. So, I mean, even, let's even say gambling, there's nothing wrong with it, it's totally fine. Well, I mean, like many people have said, there's a lot of other things going on around that absolutely, certainly we can point to many verses.
Mhm.
It is not. And even if you're not doing them, you want to be above reproach so nobody can point fingers at you ever.
Yep.
And if they do, they're going to be ashamed because they're just so wrong.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you're around that kind of thing, it doesn't seem to be following our instructions here.
That was Titus 2, verse 8?
Yes.
Okay, I said that for the Zoom people that are listening. Titus 2.8 talks about the things that surround it. We're actually having enough discussion. I'm going to skip a couple of these. Because actually, Luke 6:4 was one of the ones that I read and was like, I'm not sure what his connection was. If someone has a connection they see there, please let me know. Or 6:40, excuse me. That's part of the reason I didn't see a connection, because but no. 6:40, basically a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone when he is fully trained will be like his teacher. I wasn't real sure where he was going other than the fact we didn't see Jesus gambling. So we'll kind of skip over that one. Luke 12. Luke 12 and verse 15 reads, And he said to them, Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And we've talked about this before. The idea of wanting something more. You want a little more. Just a little more, I'll be good. Whatever it is, that idea of continually wanting more. I've got a couple here in the Proverbs. Let's turn over to Proverbs, because Proverbs actually has Proverbs, the 28th chapter. Someone gets over there if they want to read that. Go ahead. 28 and verse 19.
He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread. This goes back.
Mm-hmm. Is there a rest of it? Yeah.
He that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty.
Yeah. So the idea, we're told how to get money. We get money by working. That's sort of the Bible plan for it.
Make it your ambition to be quiet life. This is what you, so that your daily life may be outside. Those people,
Yeah.
they didn't work for you. Have no
Yep.
for
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
The New King James.
Okay. You follow frivolity. I can't speak. You are. Yeah. Yeah. See. Matthew 6:24, probably some of you in here could quote that. We're told that we can't do what? Yeah, we can't serve two masters. Again, I think that goes back to the covetousness. So all of those that we've made, I think all of those are really good points. I think we have laid what I would consider a fairly firm groundwork. I want to spend the last, what do we got, 15 minutes? Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm gonna give you one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Ecclesiastes 5, verses 10 through, we'll stop at 12.
Okay, go ahead and read that. I think that's one I didn't put on my list.
He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they are increased. What good is there to be the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? Sleep of a laboring man is whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep.
That was Ecclesiastes 5:12.
10 through 12.
10 through 12. Ecclesiastes 5, 10 through 12 talks about how basically our life isn't about things or stuff.
Things aren't the answer to problems.
And things aren't the answer to your problems. Yes, exactly. So we've said all of this. But then you're going to have people that are going to have some defenses. People who either, one, truly believe that we have not made a good case here, or two, just really want to be able to go gamble and want to justify it. One or the other. The first of all is no different than playing the stock market. All of you here, I'm going to guess, everyone here probably has a 401k of some kind. That's kind of standard in the business world anymore. What is the difference between gambling and playing the stock market? First of all, I guess, can someone explain to us what the stock market is? Somebody can give a decent, Mark, you're looking for somebody. Who you want? You want to? Go ahead.
The stock market is a place where you buy a portion of a company for an amount of money that changes based on the value of the company.
Okay.
And market forces that people predict the value will go in the future.
Yep. Okay.
That's the uncertain part of it. There is risk, there is money. The difference, though, is that when I place a bet, I bet on a horse, I either win or I lose what I bet. With stock market, the values can go down and back up again. It can also be that everybody that invests in that company wins.
Yeah.
If the company goes up in value, it becomes profitable, they have good products, and they make money, everybody can win. That never happens in gambling.
Sure. That would be the argument that some are making. They're saying, 25 years ago, when you bought those 500 shares in Apple, you were betting that they were going to be a good company. Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah. Yeah. And that is where I mentioned before when we talked about the definition of gambling. That's why that's important. Gambling is basically between two people. Even though that person might be Caesars Entertainment, whatever they call the name of that giant corporation, it's basically between those two. Okay, I see a few hands. David, go ahead.
I think the main difference, basis level, the stock market and exact same as any other. If I'm a farmer, put money into planting and producing a product and then sell it and I make money and
Yep.
move on. It's the exact same thing, just in macro.
Yeah.
So there's nothing.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, all business is risk. All business is, I'm willing to risk my money, provide a good or a service for somebody else that I believe they will want it when I get to the end of my, whatever it is I do with that
Yeah.
money. Right? I am risking the money to make more money. All business involves risk.
So there is a difference between risk and gambling, is what we're saying, right?
I mean, risk is a part of gambling.
Yeah, but they're not the same thing. Yeah, they're not the same thing. So okay, this one doesn't hold water. We can see the difference between gambling and putting 9% of what you make into your 401k every week. What about this one? What you guys have all been talking about today, I mean, that sounds like the degenerate gambler who's been sitting there at the slot machine for 23 hours. I just like to put a little down on the football game. It's not affecting anything. How do you answer that?
Obviously, if we say gambling is sinful, that is a sin.
Mm-hmm.
There's no degrees.
Yes.
So, I mean, if we start with that premise that gambling is sinful, it does take you away from God and so on and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
then this is a specious argument.
Mm-hmm.
The other way to look at this, though, rather than to say gambling is a sin, is to say gambling is a temptation that will lead me into sin.
Okay.
The sin might be covetousness,
Yeah.
but the gambling is the vehicle that leads me into being covetous.
Okay. I think that makes sense. Mark made the comment, I'm not doing very good at repeating things for the Zoom people. Mark made the comment that gambling can be the vehicle that leads us into sin, such as covetousness, and things like that. David?
I mean, it's similar to the idea of, I can't go anywhere in the Bible that says it's. However, I am throwing myself so far into
Yeah.
the throes of sin that it's going to be nigh impossible for me not to end
Yeah.
up sinning because of my choice to be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
fairly relatable
Yeah.
to that example.
Yeah.
Well, two things come to mind. One, Jason's lesson is, we're to lead our lives, we don't see how close
Yeah.
we can get to sin.
Mm-hmm.
And moderation, and I always think of drinking.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember the motorcycle manual.
Yeah.
When you get that, in the very first page, one beer
Yep.
affects your reaction time.
Yeah.
So how can you drink moderately
Yep.
and
Yeah.
not be affected?
Yeah.
By it. So it's kind of a correlation there, but that, as David said,
Mhm.
there's temptation there, and
Yeah.
why put ourselves, because it's not just the gambling, like Mark
Mhm.
says, you go to convention and your hotel
Yeah.
room, you gotta walk through all of
Yeah.
everything, all the
Yep.
machines, all the gambling,
Yeah.
the lady serving the drinks.
Yeah.
I mean, you're walking through that, and you just have to put your blinders up, but I mean, it's there, and all those temptations,
And I think, like a lot of things, it can come down to a heart issue too. Is my goal to abstain from evil, or is my goal to get just as close to sin as I can without sinning? Because it's okay if I do this as long as I don't do that. Mark?
The other question here is, let me lawyer up. Who gets to define moderation here anyway?
Yeah.
You say it's okay in moderation. Whose moderation?
Yeah.
No.
Yep. That's a good point. Who gets to define what moderation is? Bob?
The other thing we need to think about, and I think David mentioned this earlier, what came to mind was 1 Thessalonians 5:21.
Okay.
If we're a Christian, it says, prove all things, hold fast that which is good, abstain from all appearance of evil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we're a Christian and someone sees us at the horse track or the betting parlor downtown Indianapolis or
Mhm.
sports betting place or whatever,
Yep.
what kind of example are we setting for them?
Yeah.
And we're pulling them away from God by
Yeah.
our example.
Yeah.
That guy that goes to the Church of Christ out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, we've got to be very, very careful.
Yeah. And Bob, just for those on Zoom, mentioned the idea of our example, what people see. Megan, do you have?
Yeah, and I was just saying, I mean, right now, we're talking about, helping people, like, in terms of, I mean, also, think about too, where, like, people that, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that, Christians would say, no, I would never go to the casino, but then there's the other,
Yeah. Well,
Good point, like the
yeah.
NCAA finals or something.
Yeah.
The NCAA
Yep.
tournament.
The pools, and I have never been a fantasy football guy, but you can gamble on all of that now. And that's been with just in the last few years. It started out as something fun you did with a bunch of friends. Now you go to, what's the one they always advertise on the radio? Sports Kings or something like that. I forget what it is. And you set up your fantasy leagues and win money. And it's all gambling now.
You know, Dennis, one of the things that I found fascinating about Indiana,
Mhm.
and in previous life, I worked for a not-for-profit. They had various corporations. One of them was Casino Astor in Evansville.
Mhm.
And we went down there to visit them. They were obviously a casino. But the stupid thing was they had to be on water. And they had this boat
Yeah.
that would go straight out about 3
Yeah.
football fields and
Yeah.
then would back into the dock.
Yeah.
And the man who did that was ocean going certified. I always thought that was absurd.
Yeah.
I got a chance to talk to the captain.
Yeah.
He was ocean certified to do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But anyhow, my point is, they don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
See how it creeps away?
Yeah.
They're putting it on the water, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter anymore. Now we can put them on land.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
creeps and creeps and
Yeah.
creeps.
I'm old enough to remember when it got, was it Jimmy the Greek? One of the guys got fired off of one of the NFL shows because he made a comment about sports spreads back in the years ago, because you couldn't talk about that on TV. You had to pretend gambling didn't exist. Now it's half the show if you go home on Sunday morning and turn it on. Yep, Mark?
Well, I was gonna say, the other thing is, I think people would be shocked to know, I believe Indiana is the third highest in terms of how much money our state government generates from gambling.
Yep.
I believe we're number 3 in the United States too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're way up there.
We have got,
It normally shocks me.
yeah, yeah. Huey?
Gambling in a state, they say that politicians, all this is gonna go to streets, to roads.
Schools.
Yep.
Schools, and how much got it in there. So much of it is schools and roads.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of my arguments I had up here. You may not want to gamble, but man, let me tell you, we're going to have so many teachers, they're not going to know what to do in the schools with all the money we make. Your roads are going to be so smooth because of all the money we make. And that's an argument that is made. David?
What's hilarious about that argument, I mean, this isn't a biblical argument against it, just a logical one, is I remember when this happened in Florida.
Mhm.
That argument about the lottery got passed. And so a few years later, my dad and I were looking up and discovered, yeah, sure, it raises like millions of dollars at the time that goes to the state schools. But the schools aren't even getting any more money than they did before because the government just reallocates the money they were originally giving the schools other
Yeah.
places. So the schools get zero,
Yeah.
some change
Yeah.
out of it anyway. It's just a
Yeah.
fallacy.
Well, and I think the valid point to make is, even if this was true, even if it was true, even if we were going to fix roads, do the ends justify the means? No.
The other part here,
Yeah.
you talk about yeah, I'm used to this on the quality side. No, there are some things we know the penny and the other things that we don't know because we renamed them. And this is a classic case of that.
Yeah.
We know the income to the penny from gambling.
Yeah.
We don't know the indirect cost of
Yeah.
gambling because we label them broken homes, addiction counseling. You give
Yeah.
them 100 different names, but they're not called the cost of gambling.
Yeah. Yep. The bell's going to ring in just a minute. I have one more that I found, and I'm just going to real quick throw it up. There are some that will tell you gambling is a 1 Corinthians 8 issue. Gambling is a meat to idols kind of issue. If it bothers you, I probably shouldn't do it in front of you, but it's really not wrong. What do you say? Other than what we said earlier. I mean, that's kind of what we went over earlier. But
Yeah, is what we said earlier. I mean,
yeah.
Hard issue, the
Yep.
surrounding yourself with that kind of image.
Yeah. The other one that I skipped over just because the bell's ready to ring and I thought it was kind of silly, but I actually found it. The apostles gambled. In Acts 1:26, they were casting lots, so they were gambling.
There are actually several places in Scripture
Yeah.
where lots were cast.
And that was an argument I actually found online. I also found a gentleman who was arguing this would have been, they were trying to pass laws about gambling in the Bahamas, and many of the religious people there were against it, and his argument was that it was a free will issue. In other words, you have to have the ability to sin to not sin, so we should put the casinos up so people can not sin.
Let us see,
Which-
let Greece be bound.
Yeah, he was casting it as a free will issue, so I thought that was interesting. I don't have any. Does anyone want to have the last word? And I think the bell's going to ring here in just a minute. Oh, there it went. Anyone want the last word? Nope. Sounds good. We will reconvene this class next week at the same time.